Chapter 1513 Trial Day nears. Chapter 1513 Trial Day nears. Author's note. Unedited chapter. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over Plankton City. In E.E.'s apartment, the atmosphere was charged with emotions. Angie stood at the entrance with her newly regrowing horns barely visible through her silver and pink hair. The door opened before her, and Ealdris, Falco, and Endrick appeared. Angie, E.E. exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace her. Ealdris, Endrick, and Falco crowded around her as well, and it soon turned into a group embrace. Angie's eyes welled up with tears as she hugged them tightly. "I missed you all so much," she said as her voice trembled. Ealdris' usually calm demeanor was replaced by a rare display of emotion. "We tried to rescue you, Angie. We really did, but we failed. We could only save Falco." Angie's tears flowed freely now as she turned to Falco, who looked guilty and relieved at the same time. "I know," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I faintly recall, and I'm glad." Falco stepped closer. "We're just glad you're safe, Angie. Jack informed us of what Gustav did. We couldn't believe our ears." Angie wiped away a tear as she responded, "Gustav sacrificed himself to bring me back. He absorbed all the darkness from me, taking it into himself." Endrick had a disturbed look on his face as he nodded. "We need to catch up on everything, Angie." Angie took a deep breath. "I want to know everything, and I want to help. But first, tell me about Rhea. What happened to him?" E.E.'s face darkened. "Rhea was captured by the Alliance. We've tried everything to rescue him, but it's been impossible so far. We almost got captured ourselves." A sense of determination filled Angie's eyes. "Then we'll have to find another way. We can't leave him behind." Ealdris, who had been observing Angie's regrowing horns, spoke up. "Your horns, they're growing from scratch. What does that mean?" Angie touched the base of one horn gently. "Gustav had to absorb me to get all the darkness out, and in the process I lost power. But I'm starting to feel my bloodline abilities coming back." E.E. leaned forward. "That's a relief. But first we need to focus on Gustav's trial. We need to clear his name. If we succeed, it will make rescuing Rhea easier." Angie's eyes burned with resolve. "What do we need to do?" A few minutes later, they were all seated in E.B.'s apartment discussing. The boys had stated how they were shocked when Jack revealed to them that Gustav was back. News about Angie was a bonus of relief. Learning that Gustav only returned because of them and Angie, they couldn't help but feel guilty. Their decisions had further delayed his plans of getting to the stagnant, Citrus void, so they all swore to do whatever it took to save him. Endrick pulled out a data pad and placed it on the table. E.E. has compiled all of Gustav's deeds over the past year. We've documented every planet he's saved, every life he's touched. We need to present this evidence at the trial. Ealdris added, "But it's not going to be easy. The Alliance and many others have already branded him a criminal. We need to convince the whole universe that he's innocent." E.E. chimed in, "We also need to expose the truth about the Gustavo Alliance. Alevra is already working on gathering evidence from within, but I fear it might not be ready when the time comes, so we have to do the best with what we have. Don't forget how the world government will probably want to convict Gustav, so they have him in their hands. We need to be prepared for anything," Falco pointed out. They nodded in response. This was something they really needed to look out for. If they were going to be debunking all of the false allegations so far, they had to be ready to counter any new ones the opposition may include. Those old geezers were very cunning, so this needed more indulgence. The group spent the rest of the evening strategizing and preparing. They reviewed the evidence E.E. had gathered, discussing how to present it most effectively. In the blink of an eye, a week had gone by. The day before the trial, ships across the galaxies and aircraft arrived in multitudes, filling the skies above Plankton City. These visitors, both from distant planets and from all corners of Earth, converged to witness the trial that had the universe abuzz with anticipation and tension. Eldris had spent the past week meticulously preparing for the trial. He had secured one of the best lawyers on Earth, a renowned advocate named Jareth Cole. They had provided him with all the necessary information to build a strong defense for Gustav. The next morning, the atmosphere in Plankton City was electric. The largest hall in the city, a towering structure of gleaming metal and glass, stood as the focal point of this monumental event. Crowds gathered outside, and media outlets had set up their equipment, broadcasting live streams to billions of viewers across the galaxies. Reporters interviewed anyone and everyone going into the hall, capturing the diverse opinions and emotions of the crowd. Many were vocal in their condemnation of Gustav. Their voices rising above the din. "Lock him up forever," shouted one man, while others nodded in agreement. Amidst the chaos, there were also pockets of support, with groups holding signs that read, "Free Gustav" and "Justice for the Savior." Eldris, Falco, and Angie arrived in a creamy black hover car. As soon as they stepped out, reporters swarmed them, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing incessantly. "Angie, do you really believe Gustav is innocent?" a reporter from Galaxy News Network shouted. "Angie, how do you respond to the accusations against Gustav?" Another pressed. Angie took a deep breath, trying to remain calm amidst the chaos. "Gustav is not guilty of the crimes he's been accused of. He has saved countless lives, including mine. We are here to prove his innocence." Falco's face was set in a determined expression as he nodded in agreement. It hadn't been revealed to all that Falco had returned, and this happened to be one of their trump cards for today. Eldris added with composure, "We have substantial evidence and testimonies to support Gustav. We are confident that justice will prevail." The reporters continued their barrage, but the trio managed to push through the crowd, making their way to the entrance of the hall. The grand building loomed above them, its architecture a towering classical grandeur. The facade was adorned with intricate carvings and holographic displays that shimmered in the morning light. Inside, the atmosphere was no less tense. The hall was packed with spectators, each eager to witness the proceedings. The walls were lined with banners from various planets, each representing a faction or group with a vested interest in the trial's outcome. The seating area was divided into sections with dignitaries and high-ranking officials occupying the front rows. The air buzzed with whispered conversations and the occasional outburst of emotion. The hall had a capacity for nearly 20,000 people and was almost completely full. MBO officers, high-ranking government officials, and many important figures from various sectors filled the seats. The interior of the hall was an architectural marvel. The ceiling arched high above was adorned with holographic displays that depicted the galaxies and their many planets, highlighting the interconnectedness of the Alliance. Behind the judge's position sat 6 panel members representing the 6 leading planets of the Alliance. Each one was an imposing figure, radiating authority and power. Earth was, of course, one of them, and the person seated there was World Leader 2. His appearance was a shock to the entire planet since the world leaders on Earth were rarely ever seen. He was a figure with purple hair and a stern, unyielding expression. His eyes, a piercing blue, scanned the crowd with a mix of curiosity and judgment. Gustav was brought in within a gigantic tube, floating in his unconscious state. The crowd gasped upon seeing his darkened body, which oozed with oppressive energy. The sight of Gustav elicited a range of emotions from the audience. Angie, Falco, Eldris, and others who supported Gustav had their row. Angie, whose eyes were red from sleepless nights, sat beside Falco and Eldris, with his usually stoic expression showing hints of worry. EE was clad in his MBO uniform and stayed in the row of MBO officers. The MBO, of course, was unaware that he was on Gustav's side, and he maintained a composed, professional demeanor to avoid suspicion. Endrick couldn't attend due to the risk of arrest, So, he witnessed the ongoing proceedings from the top of a high-rise building in the distance. He could keep watch of everything without having to be there physically. The absence of Jack was notable. His presence would have added a layer of complexity to the trial, but his whereabouts remained unknown. Angie was expecting him to be here, so she didn't understand why he was running late, and now the trial was about to begin. Chapter 1514 Heated Courtroom. Chapter 1514 Heated Courtroom. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Angie was expecting Jack to be here, so she didn't understand why he was running late, and now the trial was about to begin. The chief judge was an elderly woman with a regal bearing and flowing white robes. She proceeded to call the court to order. Her voice echoed through the hall, commanding immediate silence. Order in the court, she announced, her tone firm. We are here today to address the charges against Gustav Crimson. The prosecution may begin. The lead prosecutor, a sharp-featured man with a calculating gaze, stood and approached the front. His name was Baron Kess, known for his ruthlessness in the courtroom. He wore a black suit that contrasted starkly with his pale skin, and his eyes glittered with a cold, determined light. Members of the court, esteemed panel, and citizens of the Alliance, he began, his voice carrying an air of authority. We are gathered here to seek justice for the countless lives affected by Gustav Crimson. He stands accused of heinous crimes that have brought turmoil to our universe. Today, we will present evidence that will leave no doubt about his guilt. He gestured towards the tube containing Gustav. Look at the man before you. Once a hero, now a symbol of destruction. We must hold him accountable for his actions. The crowd murmured in agreement as doubts of Gustav's innocence rippled through the hall. Baron Kess continued, detailing the accusations against Gustav with a meticulous, almost cruel precision. He painted a picture of a man whose powers had led to chaos and death, emphasizing the destruction of planet Osius and other incidents that had been attributed to Gustav. Jack floated in the outer atmosphere of Earth, surrounded by a chaotic melee of spacecraft and assailants. His body glowed with blue energy as he moved with devastating intensity. Blasts of energy erupted around him as he ripped through the enemy ranks with unparalleled power. He spun in midair, dodging a barrage of powerful bolts, and retaliated with a devastating wave of force that disintegrated a nearby spacecraft. Where did these guys come from? Jack muttered to himself, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the surroundings. All he knew was that when he was about to head for Gustav's trial, the MBO higher-ups had contacted him. They informed him of a threat in Earth's outer atmosphere that needed immediate attention. No further information was provided, just that these were people with nefarious intentions. They could have sent anyone else, Jack thought, effortlessly deflecting an energy beam with a flick of his wrist. He punched through the hull of another ship, sending it spiraling into the void. Why me, and why now? His suspicion grew with every attack he parried. The timing was too perfect. This has to be a delay tactic, he mused, realizing the MBO's ploy. They knew he was on Gustav's side, and by keeping him occupied, they ensured he missed the trial. Everyone knew that Jack was someone who followed the rules and obeyed commands, so this was a tactic that was most likely to work. Nice try, Jack said aloud with a growl of determination. But you can only delay me, not stop me. As if responding to his thoughts, the assailants intensified their assault. A group of them, humanoid and beast alike, converged their powers, combining their abilities into a massive net of energy. The net crackled with ominous power as it hurtled toward Jack. Before he could react, the net ensnared him, the energy tendrils wrapping tightly around his form. Jack struggled against the binding force, his muscles straining as he tried to break free. Got you now, one of the assailants, who was a reptilian figure, sneered, with glowing red eyes. Let's see how powerful you really are. Jack's eyes blazed with fury. You think this will hold me? He roared, his voice echoing through the void. With a surge of raw power, he pushed against the net while the energy around him flared brighter. The net tightened in response, as if it was absorbing energy from him. It's not just about strength. Another assailant who happened to be a mixed blood with cybernetic looks voiced. Varen Kess stood at the center of the courtroom, his presence commanding and his voice steady. He had already detailed a long list of accusations against Gustav, but he wasn't done. Furthermore, he continued, Gustav Crimson did not turn himself in when he was accused. Instead, he eluded the pursuit of the MBO for over a year. This in itself is also a crime. Gasps and murmurs echoed through the hall. Angie clenched her fists, her knuckles turning white. She exchanged worried glances with Eldris and EB. Each of them felt the weight of the accusations piling up against Gustav. Varen Kess wasn't finished. In addition, Gustav's actions have led to numerous confrontations with the Alliance. He has been responsible for the destruction of several Alliance fleets and the deaths of both MBO officers and Alliance Corps members who were simply doing their duty. Gustav's defense lawyer, a seasoned advocate, Jareth Cole, stood up. Objection, Your Honor. He called out, these claims are exaggerated and lack proper evidence. The judge banged her gavel. Overruled. Mr. Kess, continue. Varen Kess smirked. Thank you, Your Honor. Not only did Gustav wreak havoc in space, but just weeks ago he attempted to destroy Earth itself. Were it not for the intervention of Jack, the world's strongest, who then took Gustav into custody, we would not be here today. The hall erupted in a combination of gasps and murmurs. People leaned toward each other, whispering in disbelief. Jareth Cole rose to his feet. Once more. Objection? Your Honor, this is a blatant lie. Jack can testify to the truth. Varen Kess turned towards her with a triumphant smile. Then let's call upon Jack to testify, he said with his tone dripping in confidence. He looked towards the judge. Your Honor, I request that Jack be brought forward to verify these claims. The judge nodded. Agreed. Please bring Jack forward. Everyone in the hall turned expectantly towards the entrance, but Jack was nowhere to be found. An uneasy silence settled over the room. Angie's heart pounded in her chest. She looked to Eldris and Falco, her eyes wide with worry. Where is he? She whispered. Falco shook his head. I don't know, but if he doesn't show up soon, things could get even worse. Varen Kess seized the moment. It seems that Jack is unavailable. Convenient, isn't it? He said, his voice carrying a tone of mock concern. Without his testimony, we must proceed based on the evidence and witnesses we have. Jareth Cole stepped forward again. Your Honor, Jack's testimony is crucial to this case. If we could wait for a bit. The judge frowned as her patience wore thin. We will proceed. Mr. Kess, you may continue. Varen Kess' smirk grew wider. Thank you, Your Honor. He turned back to the court. I will now bring forward several witnesses who have first-hand accounts of Gustav's crimes. One by one, people took the stand, each recounting stories of destruction and chaos allegedly caused by Gustav. Each story was more damning than the last, and it was clear that many of these witnesses were either coerced or lying outright. However, there was little they could do about this. Angie could barely contain herself. She wanted to scream, to shout the truth, but she knew that any outburst could make things worse. Jareth Cole did his best to cross-examine the witnesses, poking holes in their stories and highlighting inconsistencies, but the damage was done. The jury and the public watching the live broadcast were swayed by the sheer volume of accusations. Varen Kess gave a final statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is clear that Gustav Crimson is a danger to our society. His refusal to submit to justice, his violent confrontations with our forces, and his attempts to destroy our very planet all point to one conclusion. He must be held accountable for his actions. Deep in space, A strange calm washed over Jack as he thought of a way out. He couldn't afford to waste time here. The trial was too important to miss. He needed to break free, and fast. All right, he muttered to himself, let's see how much power you can really take. Drawing on the deepest reserves of his strength, Jack concentrated his energy on a single area. The air around him crackled with electricity as he suddenly burst forth with unprecedented energy. The tendrils tightened and strained, then began to tear under the pressure of absorbing way too much energy. The assailants watched in shock as Jack's aura expanded, growing more intense by the second. Impossible, the reptilian leader hissed, trying to reinforce the net. They begin to feel the energy choke them as overbearing pressure swept across the surroundings from Jack's position. With a final, explosive burst of energy, Jack shattered the net, sending shards of energy flying in all directions. Chapter 15:15 Slowly Turning the Tide. Chapter 15:15 Slowly Turning the Tide. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Jack lunged at his attackers as his fists moved with blinding speed. The first assailant fell with a single blow, their body crumpling like a rag doll. The second tried to counter, but Jack was too fast, disarming and incapacitating them in an instant. You're done, Jack growled as his eyes emitted an infuriating glow. He grabbed the reptilian leader by the throat. Who sent you? The leader struggled as their eyes widened with fear. You can't stop us, he choked. Jack's grip tightened. I don't have time for this, he said with a cold voice before hurling the leader into the void, sending them tumbling away into the darkness. Turning his attention back to the remaining foes, Jack unleashed a flurry of attacks. He moved with unseen blur, while dismantling the enemy forces with precision and efficiency. As the last of the assailants fell, Jack cast a glance back at Earth, his resolve hardening. I will keep my promise. Activating his communication device, Jack sent a message to the MBO. The threat has been neutralized, he reported, his tone clipped. I'm heading back. Oh, hold on, Jack. There is still some tea. I'm going off duty for the rest of today. I have earned it. Without waiting for a response, Jack launched himself towards Earth, cutting through the atmosphere like a comet. The ground below blurred as he sped towards the trial. His mind was focused on one thing, ensuring Gustav received a fair hearing. When the prosecutor finished, Jareth Cole, Gustav's lawyer, rose to his feet. He was a distinguished man with graying hair and a calm, authoritative presence. His deep brown eyes radiated wisdom and determination. His tailored suit and calm demeanor commanded respect. The prosecutor had said his, but now it was his turn. Esteemed panel, members of the court, and citizens, he began, his voice steady. We are here today not to condemn an innocent man, but to seek the truth. Gustav Crimson is not the monster he has been portrayed as. He continued, you've heard the prosecution's claims. You've listened to their accusations. Now let me tell you about the real Gustav Crimson, the man who, for the past year, has dedicated his life to protecting the universe against the true forces of evil. He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. Gustav evaded pursuit not out of guilt, but because he was on a mission to protect the universe from those responsible for the destruction of planet Ozius. Had he been captured earlier, countless lives would have been lost, and planets would have been doomed. Varen Kess, the prosecution lawyer, stood up. Objection, Your Honor. There is no concrete evidence to support these claims. The judge glanced at Jareth. Mr. Cole, do you have evidence to support these claims? Jareth nodded confidently. Yes, Your Honor, I do. I present to you documented evidence of Gustav's deeds over the past year, compiled meticulously by one of his closest allies, E.E. He gestured to the large holographic projection behind him, which began displaying various documents and images of Gustav's heroic acts. The projection showed a planet with a dark sun looming, and then another instance when the sun was nowhere to be seen. Multiple images of what seemed like native species of that planet could be seen cheering for him. Some fuzzy images displayed him battling against a bunch of rough-looking aliens. Each image was accompanied by detailed reports where the lawyer explained the significance of his acts. As you can see, Jareth continued, Gustav has been a force for good. He has saved countless lives and protected people. And we have witnesses who can attest to these deeds. Verenkes stood again. Objection, Your Honor. These are just images and documents. There is no way to verify their authenticity. The judge turned to Jareth. Do you have witnesses, Mr. Cole? Yes, Your Honor, Jareth replied. I call upon our first witness, an Ozus who was among the sea-filing captives. An elderly humanoid-looking figure with insect-like head and large, soulful eyes took the stand. She introduced herself as etc. She had taken the stand from where the people from the Ozius Ring were cooped up. Please tell the court what you witnessed, Jareth said. Etc. nodded. Gustav Crimson saved millions of us from sea-filing. We were abducted when our great planet was being consumed by the darkness. The infamous sea-filing had made use of the ruckus to take us away and turned us into slaves. Sea-filing had been at large for thousands of years, and we met many others who had been enslaved by him. The Alliance had never been able to catch him. Even our people had searched for us, but were unable to find us. Gustav Crimson ended the reign of sea-filing. Without him, we would still be enslaved. The jury listened intently as etc. detailed the rescue operation, describing Gustav's bravery and determination. He put his life on the line for us and didn't save us alone. He also saved other species that had been captured by sea-filing all these years, billions in number. Verenkes stood to object, but was quickly overruled by the judge. Thank you, etc., Jareth said. I now call upon our next witness. A former child slave from the Nereus sector, a young alien girl with green skin and bright yellow eyes took the stand. She looked nervous but determined. My name is Ilera. I was a slave on Nereus to be sold off to a master. Gustav Crimson rescued me and many others. He fought against our captors and ensured we were safe. The jury watched as Ilera described her ordeal and the heroic efforts of Gustav to free her and other children. Verenkes tried to interject again, but the judge silenced him with a glare. Let the witness speak. Thank you, Ilera, Jareth said, turning to the jury. And now I call upon another witness, an elder from planet Orion. An elderly woman with wings, a glowing halo above her head, stepped forward. Her presence was calm and serene. My name is Elder Seraphine. Our planet, Orion, was on the brink of destruction, as you may have seen in the images. Our sun had turned dark and sought to consume us. We couldn't escape, we couldn't move, we couldn't even communicate with the Alliance to ask for help. We were doomed until Gustav Crimson arrived and saved us. He took our world out of harm's way and braved the darkness with his allies. Elder Seraphine's testimony was powerful, her words resonating deeply with everyone in the room. She spoke of how Gustavs took the burden upon himself and rescued a world that had formerly condemned him to be a planet destroyer. Sir Gustav, if you can hear me. She turned to face the tube Gustav was kept in, floating unconsciously. Thank you once again. She bowed with a look of appreciation. No matter how much the world condemns you, we from planet Orion will forever stand with you. Jareth turned to the jury with a deep expression. These are not just words. These are first-hand accounts of the heroism and bravery of Gustav Crimson. He did not run from the law out of guilt. He was on a mission to protect the universe. And now he stands accused of crimes he did not commit. Verenkes, looking increasingly frustrated, stood up. Your Honor, these are all compelling stories, but they do not prove Gustav's innocence. We need concrete evidence. Jareth faced Verenkes, his eyes blazing with determination. We have concrete evidence, Mr. Kess. These witnesses have provided undeniable proof of Gustav's deeds. Their testimonies, combined with the documented evidence, paint a clear picture of a man who has risked his life over and yet still stands accused of distasteful crimes. The judge nodded, looking thoughtful. Mr. Kess, you will have your chance to cross-examine the witnesses, but for now, Mr. Cole's evidence stands. Angie felt a glimmer of hope. The tides seemed to be turning in their favor. She looked at Gustav, still unconscious in the tube, and silently prayed that justice would prevail. Baron Kess, realizing he was losing ground, tried to regain control. Ladies and gentlemen, we must remember that Gustav Crimson is still responsible for countless deaths. Even if he did some good, it does not erase the fact that he evaded the law and caused destruction. Jareth stepped forward, his voice rising with passion. Gustav Crimson is a hero. He saved lives, protected planets, and fought against true evil. He is not a criminal. He is a protector, and we must not condemn him for doing what was necessary to save our universe. The courtroom fell silent as the jury pondered Jareth's words. The judge looked at both lawyers before speaking. We will take a recess before proceeding with the cross-examination of the witnesses. As the court adjourned for the recess, Angie and the others gathered around Jareth. You did great, Angie said, her voice filled with gratitude. Jareth smiled. We're not done yet. We still have a long way to go, but we're on the right path. Chapter 15:16, The Empress Arrival. Chapter 15:16, The Empress Arrival Author's Note. Unedited chapter. Jareth smiled. We're not done yet. We still have a long way to go, but we're on the right path. Falco nodded. We need to keep pushing. We can't let them condemn Gustav for crimes he didn't commit. We also have to be careful. We don't know what they may have planned. Let's use everything in our arsenal. Ealdris chimed in. As they prepared for the next phase of the trial, the thick tension in the air threatened to choke everyone present. The fate of Gustav Crimson hung in the balance. The ruler of Albruchi's planet, Empress Daria, and Matilda had just arrived in Earth's orbit. Their spacecraft, a smooth golden vessel adorned with the royal crest of Albruchi's, glided gracefully towards the entry checkpoint, where they were met by a squadron of MBO officers. Matilda was clad in her distinctive MBO uniform when stepped towards the hatch to address the officers. We are here for the trial of Gustav Crimson, she announced, her voice steady and authoritative. One of the MBO officers with a stern expression stepped forward. I'm sorry, ma'am, but you do not have clearance to enter at this time. Matilda's eyes narrowed in suspicion. I am an MBO officer, and this is Empress Daria of Albruchi's. We have every right to be here. The officer remained unyielding. Your division does not operate in this sector. We are just following protocol. Empress Daria, who had lots of imposing-looking guards surrounding her, stepped forward with a composed bearing. This trial is of great importance. We must attend. The officer shook his head. We are unable to give clearance at this time. Matilda's frustration grew as other spacecrafts were granted entry, while theirs remained detained. This is ridiculous. You're intentionally delaying us. Who gave you these orders? The officer's face remained impassive. We are just doing our job, ma'am. Matilda attempted to contact EE and the others, but found her communication efforts blocked. This is deliberate, she muttered under her breath, her annoyance mounting. Calm down, Matilda, Empress Daria said gently. We will find a way. As they continued to argue with the officers, a sudden presence was felt. A very powerful presence descended from the void in the distance, radiating with power and authority. The MBO officers visibly tensed at his arrival. Is there a problem here? Jack's voice was calm, but carried an undeniable weight. The officer hesitated, clearly intimidated by Jack's presence. We were just following protocol. Sir, Jack's gaze was unwavering. That is a fellow MBO officer. I'm sure they have important business on Earth. Let them through. But, sir, Jack's eyes flashed dangerously. I said, let them through. The officer stepped back, clearly understanding that further resistance was futile. Yes, sir, he said reluctantly, signaling to his subordinates to clear the way. Matilda, though surprised, wasted no time. Thank you. She had no idea why Jack was here and why he helped, but this was no time to bother about the schematics. She had received news from EE over a week back, and since it was so impromptu, they had little time to mobilize themselves and get down here. It was a miracle that she was able to bring Empress Daria herself here as well. Empress Daria still felt overwhelming gratitude for Gustav, so she couldn't miss this for the world. Jack nodded. I noticed your spacecraft as I was returning to Earth. Recognized you from Gustav's company. It seemed suspicious, so I intervened. Empress Daria offered a gracious smile. You have our gratitude, sir. Jack's expression softened slightly. Just get to the trial. Gustav needs all the support he can get. With that, the spacecraft resumed its descent towards Earth, finally free from the unjust delay. As they approached Plankton City, the view of the sprawling metropolis filled with towering skyscrapers and bustling streets came into view. The courtroom buzzed with tension and anticipation as more witnesses took the stand to testify on behalf of Gustav. Each testimony painted a vivid picture of selfless deeds, challenging the accusations leveled against him. Another person took the stand. Captain Marduk, a rugged and grizzled man with scars crisscrossing his face. His deep voice commanded attention as he began his tale. I am Captain Marduk from the Nereus sector. Gustav Crimson saved our sector from annihilation at the hands of an escaped convict. This man didn't stop there. He swept the entire sector clean of all crime kingpins, and he didn't ask for anything in return. The jury listened intently as Captain Marduk recounted the harrowing events, describing how Gustav risked his life to transform the Nereus sector. This further challenged the image of Gustav as a villain. My turn. Falco slowly stepped forward while the technological mask had been wearing this whole time dissolved to reveal his true face. The crowd gasped in shock, recognizing him as one of the vanished during planet Ozius destruction. His father was well known as one of the richest businessmen on Earth and had caused a lot of ruckus back then, asking the MBO to bring back his son. Everyone thought he was gone forever. No one could have expected to see him here at Gustav's trial. My name is Falco, he began with a steady tone. I'm sure it is well known that I was on planet Ozius when it was destroyed. Gustav and many of our friends did everything they could to save others during that catastrophic event. Myself and Angie were swallowed by the darkness, and yet Gustav never gave up trying to rescue us. He traveled to the dark plane, risking everything to rescue me from the being truly responsible for Ozius' destruction. Falco's words painted a vivid picture of the chaos and destruction on planet Ozius. Furthermore, hearing about the tales of the other plane struck deep fear in the hearts of everyone. The spectators were captivated, their perceptions of Gustav beginning to shift. The 6 panels behind the judge bore grim expression as they listened to Falco recount these tales. This was information they didn't want revealed to the public, and now, right before the eyes of everyone here, as well as the whole world which was streaming the trial, Falco was spitting out such details. They didn't see this coming in the slightest because Falco's return had been kept completely secret from the rest of the world. Dash, what is he talking about? Dash, a dark lord? Dash, this is scary. All across the world, people who were watching the live feed couldn't help but wonder about who they were truly up against. Cut the feed, Leader 2 voice resounded in the minds of the MBO officers around. Some of them quickly scrambled to action in order to do as instructed. He had heard this too and moved. However, it wasn't to obey the order. Instead, it was to prevent the others from doing so. After Falco, Angie took the stand as well. I was trapped in the other plane under the influence of the Dark Ruler, she began. I visited Earth to wreak havoc, driven by the Dark Ruler's influence. The MBO never revealed this to the world, but I was actually the one who threatened to destroy it, and not Gustav. I wasn't in my right senses and confronted Jack in battle. I'm sure they never revealed that my existence in that state was so much of a threat that they had to call Jack back to Earth. She paused briefly, but Gustav saved me. He stopped me from causing more destruction and brought me back to myself. He risked his life and getting captured just to save me. The hall was silent as the weight of Angie's words sunk in. Suddenly, the doors of the courtroom opened, and all eyes turned as the ruler of Albrooke's planet, a beautiful purple-skinned feminine figure with an aura of authority, entered with Matilda by her side. She walked with purpose as her presence commanded respect. "Your Honor, I apologize for my lateness," she began, her voice clear and resonant. "I am Empress Daria of Albrooke's planet, and I am here to testify." Chatter, chatter, chatter. The hall was loud briefly till the judge ordered silence once more. She wanted to dismiss the Empress and prevent her from testify, but Jack happened to just appear behind Daria. His gaze of iciness and presence of unparalleled power caused the surroundings to wince. Now, the judge was feeling pressure from both behind and ahead, but the one from Jack was no doubt much more superior, causing her to choke on her next words. The look from Jack was no doubt a silent threat, asking her to follow normal procedure. Wasn't he supposed to not appear here today? Didn't they claim he'd be delayed? "You may proceed." The judge managed to maintain a calm demeanor as she voiced out, "Thank you," Empress Daria said before starting. "Gustav Crimson rescued my planet from a tyrant who had stolen the rulership from my family and led us into tyranny for over 12 years. Chapter 15:17 Gustavo Alliance Allegation. Chapter 15:17 Gustavo Alliance Allegation. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Empress Daria continued. At a young age, I watched my family get slaughtered. I was brought to Earth to hide out until I was old enough to take back the throne, which was where I met my friend Matilda. Unfortunately, after a couple of years, I was discovered and forcefully taken back. I was on the run again, and I did my best to seek for help even from planet Earth and the Alliance, but no help came. I was ignored because the tyrant put money in the pockets of any Alliance investigator. For over a decade, I was imprisoned. I had lost all hope until he came, when the entire universe ignored my plight, the plight of my people. He restored peace to our world and brought justice to our people. Are you going to condemn such a man on false basis and lies spinned by people who haven't done half the things he has? The entire hall was briefly thrown into silence after her testimony. It had no doubt caused a stir in their minds. Earthlings were sheep who followed the narrative of superior authority. They rarely ever questioned it when leaders made a particular claim. This was why a lot of them accepted it when Gustav was proclaimed a planet destroyer. All of these testimonies had them wondering if they had been wrong all this time. Had they foolishly swallowed the lies of the world government without giving it any proper thought? Baron Kess suddenly attempted to interject, but the judge silenced him with a stern look. Let the witnesses speak. Jareth Cole seized the opportunity to strengthen Gustav's defense. These testimonies are not isolated incidents. They are part of a larger pattern, a pattern of heroism and selflessness that defines Gustav Crimson. He has saved countless lives, protected planets, and fought against true evil. These witnesses are undeniable proof. Gustav Crimson is not a criminal. To condemn him would be a grave injustice. Gustav's lawyer paused briefly before turning to stare in Jack's direction. Jack nodded, signaling that he was prepared. I will now call on Jack Sherwin to give his testimony of what happened on the day of Gustav's capture. Jareth Cole slowly moved away as Jack stepped forward. As he walked up to the witness stand, the hall fell silent as anticipation hung heavy in the air. Jack finally took the stand, and his presence commanded the attention of everyone in the courtroom. Jack began speaking in a deep tone that resonated through the hall. "I want to clear the air about my last encounter with Gustav Crimson." He paused, making sure everyone was listening intently. "At the time, I was about to kill Angie because she was a threat to the entire Earth. She was under the influence of a dark power, wreaking havoc and endangering countless lives." There were murmurs among the audience, but Jack's steady gaze silenced them quickly. Gustav interfered and saved Angie. He didn't just stop her, he brought her back. He saved her, and in doing so, also saved the Earth. The prosecutor, Varen Kess, jumped to his feet. "Objection. This doesn't change the fact that Gustav has been responsible for countless crimes. He's a danger to society." Jareth Cole, Gustav's lawyer, stood up to interject. "Your Honor, what Jack is saying is crucial to understanding Gustav's actions. He didn't act out of malice or self-interest. He acted to protect and to save." The judge nodded. "Continue. As I mentioned, Gustav saved Angie from the dark influence by absorbing it into himself and went into an unconscious state to prevent himself from being a threat to this world. I didn't capture him. I merely took him back to see if the MBO could be of any help." Jack's statement caused a visible stir across the world. Everyone could hardly believe their ears, but since it was coming directly from the mouth of the world's strongest, it had to be true, right? Jareth turned to the audience with a firm and clear voice. "You've heard the testimonies of those Gustav has saved. You've seen the evidence of his heroism. Gustav evaded pursuit not because he was guilty, but because he was on a mission to protect us all. His actions were necessary to stop greater evils." Jack nodded in agreement. "Gustav has been fighting battles we didn't even know existed. He has been dealing with threats that the MBO and the Alliance have overlooked. Without him, many more lives would have been lost." The room was silent as Jack's words slowly sunk in. Varen Kess, however, was not ready to give up. He stood up again, his voice dripping with skepticism. "And how can we trust that Gustav's intentions were pure? He has a history of violence and destruction." Jareth Cole stepped forward, his eyes blazing with conviction. "Gustav's actions speak for themselves. He saved Angie. He saved countless others. And he has been protecting us all this time. The real question is, why are we so quick to condemn a man who has done so much good?" The audience murmured among themselves as the doubts and suspicions were slowly being replaced by a sense of admiration and respect. But as the courtroom buzzed with this new perspective, a conspiracy was slowly brewing. Hidden in the shadows, a group of powerful individuals plotted to ensure that Gustav would never be free. They whispered among themselves, their plans taking shape as the trial continued. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, Angie, Eldris, Falco, and EE watched with bated breath. They could see the shift in the atmosphere, the growing support for Gustav. "This is going well. We might not even need evidence of Gustav not being in control of the Gustavo Alliance," Eldris whispered. Angie and Falco nodded, feeling relieved with every second that went by. Angie turned to where Gustav was being held with a look of hope. "Hold on for a little longer, my love. You'll be free soon." As the hearing continued, the tension continued to grow. The mix of humans, aliens, and other extraterrestrial spectators hung on to every word spoken. A panel member seated behind the judge with emerald skin and elongated features leaned forward. "And what of Gustav Crimson's connection to the Gustavo Alliance?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the room. Varen Kess seized the opportunity. "Exactly, Your Honor. This question goes to the heart of the matter. There is no concrete evidence proving that Gustav isn't the leader of the Gustavo Alliance. Given their actions, This is a crucial point. Looks like I spoke too soon, Aldris muttered with a look of dejection at his position. Angie turned to where E was seated, trying to give him a signal. Who was seated among the MBO officers, had been discreetly trying to contact Elevra through his communicator. He muttered under his breath, "Come on, Elevra, pick up." But the transmission kept failing, adding to his growing frustration. It seemed like Elevra was in a position where she couldn't accept this transmission. And understood how dangerous it was, but the situation demanded for it. Jareth Cole stood to counter Varen's accusations. "Your Honor, this is a baseless claim. We have presented extensive evidence of Gustav's heroism and his continuous fight against real threats. The Gustavo Alliance is merely using his name to instill fear and confusion." The spectators murmured among themselves. Many had already begun to doubt the villainous portrayal of Gustav, especially after hearing the testimonies of those he had saved. But the shadow of the Gustavo Alliance's atrocities still loomed large, casting doubt on his innocence in this regard. Leader 2 finally spoke. "We need substantial proof that Gustav has no ties to the Gustavo Alliance. Until then, these allegations hold weight." The back and forth between Varen Kess and Jareth Cole grew more heated. "Mr. Cole," Varen pressed, "you cannot deny the Gustavo Alliance's actions. They have taken over multiple planets, killed innocent species. How can you absolve your client of these connections without irrefutable evidence?" Jareth responded firmly, "We are working on providing that evidence. But we must remember that mere association, without proof of command or involvement, does not make someone guilty." Suddenly, a crackling noise filled the hall. The ceiling began to tremble as the ominous crackling noise filled the vast hall. Spectators, officials, and security personnel alike looked up in confusion. Everyone wondered where the sound was coming from, but outside the hall, the crowd gasped in surprise as a crack appeared in the sky. The crack widened, causing blistering winds to sweep across the surroundings. From the rift emerged a swirling vortex of dark energy, pulsating with malevolent power. The atmosphere grew colder, and the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the vicinity. Through the widening crack, a figure began to descend, cloaked in an aura of darkness that seemed to absorb all light around it. The figure was draped in a hooded robe, as black as the void of space. The robe flowed and billowed, as if alive, and its edges seemed to shimmer with a dark, ethereal energy. Chapter 1518, you will listen. Chapter 1518, you will listen. Author's note. Unedited chapter The Hood was deep and shadowy, obscuring the face beneath, but as the figure drew closer, the faint outline of a mask could be seen. The mask was an intricate piece of craftsmanship, carved from obsidian and adorned with swirling patterns that glowed with an inner crimson light. The eyes of the mask were hollow voids, emanating a chilling glow that pierced through the darkness. As the figure descended further, the masked eyes seemed to scan the surroundings, instilling dread in all who met their gaze. Lightning crackled around the figure, dancing in colors of deep purple and blue, creating an electrifying display that illuminated the courtroom with flashes of unnatural light. The sound of the crackling energy was deafening, and the air buzzed with its intensity. With a final, thunderous crash, the figure broke through the hall's ceiling, landing with a resounding impact that shook the entire building. The floor beneath its feet cracked and splintered, and a shock wave of energy rippled outward, causing those nearby to stumble and fall. The figure stood tall and menacing in the center of the courtroom, its presence commanding immediate attention and fear. The robe continued to flow around it, defying gravity and logic, while the mask's glowing eyes surveyed the chaos it had wrought. "The Gustavo Alliance has come to retrieve our god," the figure announced in a deep and resonant voice that echoed through the hall like a death knell. As it spoke, the lightning above intensified, casting a surreal, apocalyptic light over the scene. The entire hall erupted into chaos. Spectators screamed and scrambled for cover, and security personnel rushed forward to confront the intruder. But the figure raised its hands, summoning a barrier of lightning that repelled them with ease. Futile, it declared with an air of absolute authority. "We will take back our god and leave this place. Any interference will be met with severe consequences." Angie, Falco, Eldris, and Evie sprang into action. "We have to protect Gustav," Angie shouted, her voice filled with determination. Jareth Cole tried to maintain order. "Everyone, stay calm and remain in your seats." But the hooded figure's presence and proclamation had already thrown the courtroom into disarray. The Alliance panel members and the judge looked on in shock, their authority momentarily shattered by the sheer force of the intruder's arrival. Varen Kess, seizing the moment, pointed at Gustav. "See? This is exactly what we've been talking about. Gustav Crimson is undeniably linked to the Gustavo Alliance." Jareth Cole retorted, "This is an orchestrated attempt to frame my client." In the midst of the pandemonium, the masked figure moved toward Gustav, who floated unconscious in the containment tube. "Our god must awaken," the figure intoned. Angie lunged forward, trying to stop the intruder. "No. You can't take him. Swoof!" Her speed was still a far cry from its original level, but no normal person would be able to follow it. She had been the fastest to react to the intruder. Unfortunately, the figure swatted her away with a wave of its hand, sending her crashing into the wall in the distance. "Do not interfere. It's that guy from before." Endrick recalled the Gustavo Alliance member they battled with on the planet where Gustav's spacecraft underwent repair. Falco summoned a wave of dark energy, directing it at the intruder. "Get away from him," he roared. The masked figure turned, raising a barrier to deflect the attack. "Meaningless. Haven't we done this before? You are all mere mortals. You cannot stop the will of the Gustavo Alliance." Varen Kess continued to use the chaos to his advantage. "Ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to see the truth. Gustav Crimson is the leader of this terror." Jareth Cole, undeterred, shouted back, "This is a staged attack. Do not be deceived. Be reduced to ash. All those who would slander our god." The figure voiced out while pointing at the prosecutor. The prosecutor's eyes widened in terror as a powerful lightning bolt descended from the skies above. Outside the courtroom, the media scrambled to report on the unprecedented events. The cut live feeds only fueled speculation and conspiracy theories. The world watched in horror and fascination, unaware of the true stakes within the hall. Thrara, after the powerful lightning descended, the courthouse became a scene of utter chaos. Dust and debris filled the air, and the sound of shouts reverberated through the vast hall. Everyone had expected the prosecutor to be reduced to ash, but when the dust died down, Jack could be seen in the initial position of the prosecutor. Meanwhile, the prosecutor was in an entirely different position. Jack stood poised, ready to confront the unexpected guest who had descended from the crack in the sky. The figure, cloaked in dark robes and a menacing mask, seemed unfazed by the feat Jack had just displayed. More figures began to emerge from the crack above, each one draped in robes bearing the Gustavo Alliance sigil. They descended with an eerie fluidity, surrounding Jack and positioning themselves around Gustav's containment tube. The atmosphere grew tense, the air thick with impending violence. Jack's presence spread wide, releasing an aura of power and authority. "Only one will be left alive when I am done with you lots," he declared, his voice resonating with an unyielding threat. The Gustavo Alliance members showed no fear. Their resolve remained unwavering as they tightened their circle around Jack. Several moved closer to Gustav's tube, ready to make contact and take him away. The tension reached a fever pitch, and it seemed like the situation was about to explode into a full-blown battle. Just as a member of the Gustavo Alliance reached out to touch the tube, a blinding golden light erupted from within. Gustav's body turned a radiant gold, emitting a powerful blast of energy that swept across the hall. The closest person was sent flying, crashing into the far wall with a sickening thud. Others around Gustav were thrown back, their bodies slamming into the crumbling walls of the hall. The sheer force of the blast caused the walls of the courthouse to crack and crumble, sending chunks of stone and metal raining down. The entire structure groaned under the strain, and the once grand hall was reduced to a scene of utter devastation. Amidst the rubble, Gustav floated in place. His 3-in-1 golden body was activated, he radiating with an aura of unmatched power and authority. "Quiet down," Gustav's voice boomed, not just in the hall but across the entire earth. Every living being heard his command in their minds, a voice that brooked no disobedience. The chaos halted, and a stunned silence fell over the scene. Even the most hardened warriors of the Gustavo Alliance were left in awe, their confidence shaken by the display of raw power before them. The hall was stoked with powerful figures, ranging from MBO officers to the alien spectators to the Alliance leaders, and yet not a single one of them could deny the chill that permeated their bodies. "It is time I reminded you lot of who you are dealing with," Gustav's voice echoed, carrying a weight that demanded absolute attention. Jack, though prepared for battle, couldn't help but be impressed by the sudden turn of events. He stepped back, allowing Gustav to take center stage. The members of the Gustavo Alliance hesitated, uncertainty creeping into their eyes as they faced the radiant figure before them. Gustav surveyed the scene with a mix of amusement and disdain. "You really had the audacity to hold a trial for me, while I was unconscious, unable to participate in my own defense." Gustav's voice was calm, but carried a steely edge. One of the Alliance leaders sitting behind the judges, a stern-faced woman with crystalline eyes, stood and addressed him. "There is nothing wrong with proceeding so long as you were present, even in an unconscious state." Gustav's laughter rang out, deep and resonant, shaking the very ground beneath them. The earth trembled, as if sharing in his mirth. His grim expressions on the faces of everyone in the surroundings increased the longer he laughed. The prosecutor, seizing the moment, attempted to regain control. "You see, Your Honors, this is precisely the kind of behavior we are dealing with. Gustav is unpredictable, unstable, and dangerous. He uses his power recklessly." Before he could continue, Gustav raised a hand, and a wave of pinkish-red energy swept across the entire earth. The energy radiated from him in powerful surges, enveloping every living being. Instantly, everyone fell to their knees. Their wills were overwhelmed by the force of Gustav's cosmic superiority. "I will speak, and you will all listen." Gustav's voice echoed across the globe, resonating in the minds of every creature, human and alien alike. Silence fell over the courtroom, the only sound being the faint vibration of Gustav's energy. He took a deep breath and began to speak, his tone grave and contemplative. "You accuse me of heinous crimes, yet you fail to see the truth. I am not a good person. I have never claimed to be. Most of the acts I performed were not out of some misguided sense of heroism. No, they were for the handful of beings in this vast universe who mean something to me." Chapter 15:19, The Right Verdict. Chapter 15:19, The Right Verdict Author's Note. Unedited chapter. Gustav paused briefly, allowing his words to sink in. The spectators, still on their knees, listened with rapt attention, unable to tear their eyes away from the figure before them. "I care little for the rest of the world, but for those few, I would move mountains. It is for them that I have fought, bled, and sacrificed, not for the applause or the accolades, not to be branded a hero. Gustav's eyes scanned the faces before him, which were mostly filled with fear, before he continued. The allegations against me are false. The crimes you claim I committed are fabrications. I am no saint, but neither am I the monster you make me out to be. My deeds, whether good or bad, were driven by my own motives, not by a desire to bring harm to the innocent. He let out a sigh, his gaze growing distant as he spoke of deeper truths. The world is full of fools and greedy bastards, those who are never satisfied with what they have. They seek to claim benefits wherever they can, trampling over anyone who stands in their way. This is the nature of living beings, selfish, insatiable, and short-sighted. The crowd was spellbound, unable to look away from Gustav's commanding presence. His words cut through them like a blade, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths. We live in a universe driven by greed and selfishness. You all scramble for power, for wealth, for status, without a thought for the consequences. You damned me because it was convenient, because it served your purposes. But now, you must face the reality, for I am no one to be trifled with. Gustav's golden aura flared brighter, casting long shadows across the courtroom. His eyes, filled with a deep wisdom and an even deeper sorrow, bored into those of the Alliance leaders. You call for my trial, but I stand here today to put you all on trial. You accuse me of crimes, yet your hands are far from clean. You seek to use me as a scapegoat for your own failures and fears, but I will not be your pawn. The Alliance leaders exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering under the weight of Gustav's words. Even Varenkes, who had been so sure of his victory, seemed at a loss for words. Gustav continued, his voice steady and unyielding. You must understand that the universe does not revolve around your petty squabbles and power plays. There are greater threats out there, forces that seek to annihilate us, forces that I am giving my all to face, forces that should be focused on, and yet your sight's blurred from greed. He paused, looking around the hall at the judges, the spectators, and his allies. I do not seek your approval, nor your forgiveness, nor your hero beliefs. I seek only to protect those who matter to me, and if that makes me a villain in your eyes, so be it. But know this, I will not bow to your judgment. The hall remained in stunned silence as Gustav's words hung heavy. It wasn't like they could speak even if they wanted to. Let me tell you a story, Gustav began, his voice resonant and clear. A story of a boy who was always a loser, always at the bottom. He was laughed at, mocked, and pushed around. He had nothing. No power, no influence, no friends. Just a dream that someday, somehow, things would change. He paused briefly, once more, while hovering around. Then, one day, everything did change, Gustav continued. An unexpected stroke of fortune brought me power beyond my wildest dreams. But I hid it. I kept it a secret because I knew the greed of people. I knew that if they discovered what I was capable of, they would come for me. And so I waited. I grew stronger, fought battles within and outside of Earth, and saved this planet time and time again. Not once did I think of conquering it. I fought because I wanted to protect those few who mattered to me. Gustav's gaze hardened, and he spoke with more intensity. I was skeptical about revealing that I had many bloodlines and could extract bloodlines from mixed bloods. I knew what that kind of power would do to people, but I believed that one day I would be powerful enough to no longer need to hide it. He raised his hand, and a glowing orb appeared, the sacred jewel. And yet, here we are. I am not surprised that the Alliance and Earth authorities have tried to pin false allegations on me. They want to dissect me, take my power for themselves and their selfish gains. With a flick of his wrist, the orb projected a holographic image. The footage played out before the stunned crowd, showing scientists discussing their plans for Gustav once he was found guilty. And once he's declared guilty, we'll finally have him, one scientist said, his voice dripping with anticipation. We can dissect him, unlock his secrets, and take his power for ourselves. Another scientist chimed in. The world government wants a big cut of the pie, but they'll let us do the dirty work. It's a win-win for them. The alliance leaders and the judges struggled against the hold of Gustav's cosmic superiority, their faces contorted in frustration, but they were powerless. The footage continued to play out all across the world. Everyone could clearly see how these scientists spoke of him, like he was some kind of resource. They added that the world government had their eyes on Gustav since he saved the Earth from young Joe, and now Gustav had finally given them the chance to legally turn him into their specimen. The entire world had watched, and the truth was now undeniable. The allegations against Gustav were false, fabricated to serve the greedy ambitions of a few. Gustav looked around the room. Time and time again, I tried to give living creatures the benefit of the doubt. I believed that maybe, just maybe, they could change. But all you have proven is that you cannot. You are driven by greed, by selfishness, by a lust for power. He took a deep breath as his aura flared brighter. That is why I was okay with the universe perishing. If it weren't for my loved ones, I would let it all burn. But because they exist, because they matter to me, the universe gets another chance. 5 years quest completed. One half become the most powerful mixed blood. Gustav's voice grew colder, more resolute. I am now the most powerful mixed blood on Earth. Anyone who comes for me will meet a very gruesome end. I have no more patience for your schemes and deceit. I could have destroyed this planet 100 times over if I wanted to, but I didn't. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. And that is the reality you must face. I am not your enemy. I am not your conqueror. But cross me, threaten those I care about, and you will know true fear. Let this be the last time anyone dares to mess with me, Gustav declared, his tone brooking no argument. As his words reverberated through the air, a binding process began. Cosmic strings, shimmering with a light that defied the spectrum, shot out from Gustav's fingertips. They wrapped around the masked figure in dark robes first, encasing him in an unbreakable cocoon. The figure couldn't even struggle as the strings tightened, rendering his supernatural abilities useless as well. One by one, the members of the Gustavo Alliance met the same fate. Each was bound tightly, their powers nullified. Finally, Gustav deactivated his cosmic superiority. The oppressive weight lifted from the earth, and people everywhere gasped for breath as their bodies slowly regained motor functions. Chaos gave way to a tense stillness as everyone tried to process what had just happened. In the courtroom, the judge and the alliance leaders were at a loss. They exchanged wary glances, unsure of how to proceed. Gustav's display of power had left them speechless, their carefully laid plans shattered. Suddenly, a figure broke through the tension. Angie ran towards Gustav with a look of relief. Her arms had wrapped around him before anyone could even understand what was happening. She locked him in a fierce embrace as her breath hitched with emotion. "Gustav," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're back." Gustav's rigid stance softened as he returned her embrace. His eyes closed for a moment as he enjoyed the solace of her warmth. "Angie," he murmured, his voice heavy with the weight of recent events. "I'm here. Am not going anywhere." The judge cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Gustav," she began cautiously, "what do we do now?" Gustav gently disentangled himself from Angie, turning to face the judge. "I think you know what to do. I don't think anyone here dares stop the final verdict. The right verdict. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1520 After Trial Reunions. Chapter 1520 After Trial Reunions, author's note. Unedited chapter. The courtroom still lay in ruins due to the cosmic power that had been unleashed within. Debris and rubble were strewn across the floor, with scorched patches marked in Gustav's position. Despite the destruction, a sense of awe permeated the air. Spectators ranging from MBO officers to aliens, important dignitaries to alliance leaders, all stood in silent reverence, their gazes fixed on the central figure who made the entire world freeze. In the midst of this chaotic scene, Gustav stood with his arm wrapped protectively around Angie. After a moment of stunned silence, the judge regained her composure and raised the gavel. Her voice, though trembling slightly, carried the weight of finality. In light of the evidence and the actions witnessed here today, I declare Gustav Crimson innocent of all charges. The sound of the gavel striking the surface echoed through the courtroom, a signal that justice had been served. MBO officers moved swiftly with looks of urgency as they began to cater to the tied-up Gustavo Alliance members on the ground. The Gustavo Alliance members, once a formidable threat, were now powerless. Their supernatural abilities had been rendered useless by the cosmic bindings. As the officers escorted them away, 3 familiar figures made their way through the wreckage toward Gustav. Falco, EB, and Eldris approached, their faces lighting up with relief and joy. The sight of their friend, victorious and vindicated, brought a warmth to their hearts. He was the first to reach Gustav, throwing his arms around him in a bear hug. "Gustav, you did it. You're finally free." Gustav laughed, the sound rich and full of life. It's good to see you're alive." E clapped Gustav on the back with a wide grin on his face. "You were amazing out there, man. I've never seen anything like that before. You really showed them." Eldris nodded in agreement, his eyes reflecting admiration. "You've always been strong, Gustav, but today you were unstoppable. Are you truly the strongest now?" Falco was still in disbelief, even though he was very happy about how it all turned out. Gustav smiled in gratitude for his friends. "You guys are the best. I am aware of everything you did while I was out. Your support means everything." As they shared a hearty reunion, laughter and light-hearted banter filled the air. The tension that had gripped the courtroom melted away, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and relief. It was a moment of triumph. Gustav's expression grew serious as he turned to face the Alliance leaders who had been watching the reunion with mixed emotions. "There's something else that needs to be done," he said, his voice firm. "Rhea needs to be freed. He's been held captive for too long. I am sure you know what will happen if I decide to head there myself." Leader 2 piercing blue eyes remained imposing as he responded, "We promise, Gustav. We will ensure that Rhea is released as soon as possible." Gustav nodded with a steady gaze. "See that it's done. No one ever spoke to the Alliance or world leaders this way, not even Jack." So this sight was quite shocking, but seeing how Gustav had proclaimed he was now the most powerful on Earth, it made sense for him not to cower to anyone. With that assurance, the tension between Gustav and the Alliance leaders eased slightly. They had witnessed his power, and now they saw his resolve to protect those he cared about. They couldn't truly gauge Gustav's strength, but someone who was able to bring every single person on Earth to their knees wasn't someone to be trifled with. Amid the ruins, Angie turned to Gustav with love and affection gleaming in her eyes. "I'm glad you're okay, Gustav. I've missed you." He looked at her as his heart overflowed with warmth. "I have missed you too, Angie. It's been a really long year without you." Without another word, they leaned into each other, sharing a passionate kiss. Their lips entangled as they softly puckered away, with Gustav's arms wrapping around Angie's waist. She wrapped her arms around his neck and glued to his body tightly as the world behind them faded in this passionate moment. It was a kiss filled with all the emotions they had kept bottled up: relief, love, and the promise of a future they would face together. Falco, E.E., and Eldris exchanged knowing smiles, their hearts warmed by the sight of their friend's happiness. The courtroom, though still in disarray, felt a little brighter, a little more hopeful. As the kiss ended, Gustav and Angie remained close, their foreheads touching. "What now?" she whispered with a soft tone. Gustav took a deep breath as his gaze swept over the gathered crowd. "There's a lot to do, but the problems of the universe can wait. Let's spend some time together first." The sun was starting to set, and the sky painted itself in hues of orange and pink. Gustav and the others gathered outside the courthouse. Falco looked up at the sky. After all this, I think we deserve a break." E.E. chuckled. "A break sounds good. Maybe a little vacation? Somewhere far away from cosmic battles and courtroom drama." Eldris nodded thoughtfully. "We should take some time to rest and recharge. But we also need to stay vigilant." Gustav smiled at his friends, grateful for their unwavering support. "A break sounds perfect. We've earned it." The scene outside the courthouse was one of chaos giving way to celebration. Spectators, dignitaries, and MBO officers were milling about, talking in hushed, excited tones, all eyes occasionally darting to Gustav and his friends as they stood together, basking in the aftermath of their victory. Endrick, who had been watching everything from the top of a high-rise building in the distance, decided it was time to move. With a leap, he launched himself off the building. Fuhum, his body traveled in an elongated arc as he flew over multiple buildings lined up across the city. He proceeded to blink in midair and vanished from sight. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared right before Gustav and the others, landing with a light thud. "Big brother!" Endrick's voice rang out with a mixture of joy and relief as he rushed forward. Gustav turned just in time to catch his younger brother in a tight embrace. "Hey, kiddo!" he exclaimed with a voice filled with warmth. They held each other close, their bond as brothers reaffirmed in that heartfelt moment. "It's good to see you," Gustav said, pulling back slightly to look at him. Endrick's eyes sparkled with happiness. "I'm so glad you're safe and finally free of all charges." It wasn't long before others began to join the group. Matilda approached, her eyes bright with emotion as she took in the sight of her friends. "Matilda!" Angie exclaimed while rushing forward to hug her. Matilda embraced Angie tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Angie, it's been too long," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I thought I'd never see you again." Angie held her friend close, her own tears flowing freely. "I'm here now, and so are you. Although a lot has happened, it all worked out." As the emotional reunion continued, E.E. couldn't resist lightening the mood. Gustav," he said with a mischievous grin, "you must have been so horny since Angie vanished. Must have been a long, dry spell for you. Did you make use of your left hand?" "That's wild man." Gustav gave E.E. a light jab while laughter erupted from the group. The tension of the past days that Gustav's trial had brought was melting away in this moment. Even Gustav, who rarely indulged in such jokes, couldn't help but chuckle. Gustav shook his head with a smile. "But you're right. Having Angie back is more than I could have hoped for." As the laughter subsided, the gathering grew even larger. Empress Daria, the elder from planet Orion, Ozius natives, the former alien child slave, and other witnesses who had testified to Gustav's innocence began to huddle around him. Their expressions were filled with gratitude and admiration. Empress Daria stepped forward with a friendly but authoritative bearing. "Gustav," she said with a melodic tone, "your actions in the past have saved not just yourself but countless others. You have my deepest thanks." The people of Abrukes will forever be grateful. Gustav nodded with a light smile. Thank you, Empress Daria. Your support and testimony were invaluable. I truly appreciate it. The elder from planet Orion, a wizened being with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ages, nodded in agreement. You have done great things, Gustav. We are honored to have stood by you. The alien child, with wide, curious eyes and a shy smile, approached and tugged at Gustav's sleeve. Thank you once again, mister, the child said in a small voice. Eloisa is free because of you. You made the bad people go away. Gustav squatted, meeting the child's gaze. You're welcome, he said gently. I'm glad I could help. Chapter 1521 Worldwide Protests. Chapter 1521 Worldwide Protests. Author's note. Unedited chapter. The scene outside the courthouse was heartwarming as the crowd increased, ranging from people Gustav had helped in the past to reporters and other media outlets. It seemed like it would never end till Eldris brought his hovercar over and revved the engine up to get the group's attention. Gustav and the others pushed through the crowd to get into the luxuriously built red hovercar. Sighs of relief could be heard within the car as they sped off. Falco turned to the group with a thoughtful expression. So, about that vacation we were talking about, he said. Where should we go? Matilda's eyes lit up with interest. A vacation sounds wonderful. I'm in. Angie nodded in agreement, while her fingers and Gustav's were locked. Let's go somewhere peaceful, where we can all relax and enjoy each other's company. Eve grinned. I hear the beaches at Elysium Prime City are amazing this time of year. Crystal clear waters, white sandy beaches, and no cosmic battles in sight. Eldris nodded thoughtfully. Elysium Prime sounds perfect. We could use some sunshine and relaxation. Gustav looked around and chuckled. Elysium Prime it is, then. Empress Daria, who had been quietly observing, smiled softly. Can participate in this Elysium Prime vacation as well. Of course, you're very welcome to. Angie held her hand cheerfully. It's nice to finally meet you. Matilda mentioned you in the past, she added. Thank you, Angie. Empress Daria smiled while responding. They were surprised that Daria was interested in joining them, since she was an empress and had an entire planet to run, but none of them were against the idea. As the saying went, the more, the merrier. For the next couple of days, the news of Gustav's innocence spread like wildfire across the planet. Every media outlet, news channel, and social media platform was buzzing with updates and analysis. Headlines blared from every screen. Gustav cleared of all charges. World government deception exposed. Protests erupt over misconduct. The streets of major cities were alive with the sound of voices raised in anger and solidarity. People gathered in droves, holding signs and chanting slogans, demanding justice for Gustav and accountability for those who had wronged him. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the fervor of a population that felt betrayed. Hold the government accountable, a protester shouted through a megaphone in the heart of Atrahea City, which was buzzing with thousands of demonstrators. We demand the accusers be held accountable. No more lies. Another protester, a woman with fiery eyes and a resolute expression, held a sign that read, "Scientists to court." She turned to the person beside her. They wanted to turn him into a lab rat. They should be the ones standing trial now. The media scrambled to cover the escalating situation. Reporters stood on the front lines of the protests, their faces tense as they delivered live updates. This is Jane Roberts reporting from the center of Atrahea, a reporter said, her voice barely audible over the chants. The public outcry has reached a boiling point. Citizens are demanding that the government and the scientists who conspired against Gustav be held accountable. Inside news studios, heated debates were taking place. Pundits and analysts argued over the implications of the recent revelations. It's clear that the government has a lot to answer for, one analyst said, gesturing passionately. They deceived us all, and they need to be held responsible for their actions. But let's not forget the bigger picture here, another countered. Gustav's display of power raises questions about the true extent of his abilities. Is he really the world's strongest mixed blood, more powerful than Jack? The debates raged on, both in the media and on the streets. Some believed the stories of Gustav's unparalleled strength, citing his recent feats, as undeniable proof. Others were skeptical, insisting that the media was exaggerating his abilities. Meanwhile, the corridors of power were in turmoil. Government officials and alliance leaders were scrambling to address the growing crisis. In a high-level meeting room, a group of them sat around a large table, their faces etched with worry. "We need to contain this situation," one official said, his voice urgent. "The public is calling for our heads. We have to show that we're taking action." "The scientists involved are already on the run," another added. "We need to find them and bring them to justice before things get completely out of hand." MBO officers were dispatched to hunt down the scientists that were shown in the footage displayed by SJ. Their mission was clear: apprehend those who had conspired against Gustav and bring them to court. The officers moved cautiously, knowing that the eyes of the world were upon them. They had to make it look like they were truly rooting out the bad, ones so many had to be sacrificed. In a quiet, dimly lit apartment, one of the fugitive scientists, Dr. Malcolm Voss, paced nervously. His once respected career was in ruins, and he knew that he couldn't stay hidden forever. A news report on the TV caught his attention, and he listened intently. "The MBO has issued arrest warrants for several scientists, MBO officers, and government dignitaries," the anchor said. "Authorities are urging these individuals to turn themselves in peacefully." Dr. Voss sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "This is a nightmare," he muttered to himself. "I never wanted it to come to this." Just then, a knock on the door startled him. He froze, his heart pounding. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Dr. Voss, we know you're in there," a voice called out. "This is the MBO. Open the door and come out with your hands up." Dr. Voss' mind raced as he thought about how to get out of this situation. He turned to the balcony and grabbed a jacket to cover himself before jumping out. The moment he activated his bloodline to turn himself weightless, a figure in MBO uniform leapt from below and grabbed onto him. Other MBO officers in the surroundings sprang into action as well. Energy binding nets were shot upwards, and the scientist got covered up instantly, causing his bloodline energy to immediately dissipate. He fell from the air alongside the other MBO officer. They were both caught, and the officer got freed. "Dr. Malcolm Voss, you're under arrest," one of the officers said, while stepping forward to place him in energy cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." This wasn't the only place where such an occurrence was taking place. The other scientists were being hunted as well. Commander Zanatus did well to whittle out the corrupt MBO officers as well and add it to the list. The officers who were being hunted were the hardest to scrap up, but they were slowly making progress. As the protests continued and the search for the fugitive scientists intensified, the world watched with bated breath. The story of Gustav's innocence and the subsequent fallout had captivated everyone, sparking a global conversation about justice, power, and the responsibilities of those who wield it. The days passed, the protests showed no signs of abating. Crowds gathered outside government buildings, demanding transparency and accountability. Signs bearing slogans like "Justice for Gustav" and "End Government Corruption" filled the streets. One evening, a group of protest leaders managed to secure a meeting with high-ranking government officials. The atmosphere in the room was tense as the two sides faced each other. A protest leader, a young woman with a fiery gaze, spoke first. "We represent the voices of the people. We demand that the government take full responsibility for its actions and hold those responsible accountable. A government official, his face lined with stress, responded, "We understand the anger and frustration of the public. We are taking steps to address the situation and ensure that justice is served." The young woman leaned forward, her voice steady but fierce. "Words are not enough. We need concrete actions. The scientists who conspired against Gustav must be brought to justice, and the government must implement reforms to prevent such abuses of power in the future." The official nodded, recognizing the gravity of the situation. "We will do everything in our power to make things right. The people deserve the truth, and we are committed to providing it." Elysium Prime was a paradise on Earth, a perfect escape from the chaos that had gripped the planet. The city beach, with its pristine white sands and crystal-clear waters, was the epitome of serenity and beauty. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over everything it touched. Angie, Empress Daria, Vera, and Matilda were all dressed in vibrant swimsuits that accentuated their figures. Angie's suit was a playful, floral print that matched her sunny personality. Empress Daria's was an elegant, deep blue that complemented her regal bearing. Vera chose a fiery red number that was the opposite of her damp spirit, and Matilda's swimsuit was a smooth black, understated yet stunning. They laughed and chatted as they relaxed on the beach, enjoying the feel of the warm sun on their skin and the gentle breeze that carried the scent of the ocean. Chapter 1522 Elysium Prime City. Chapter 1522 Elysium Prime City. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Empress Daria, with her authoritative bearing, still managed to engage in light-hearted banter, showing a more relaxed side of herself that was rarely seen. Nearby, Falco, Eldris, Endrick, and Rhea were having the time of their lives at the shore. EE's melanin skin glistened in the sunlight, his wet, bushy afro hair bouncing as he moved. His infectious laughter filled the air as he cracked jokes and splashed water at his friends. You look like a sea monster with that hair," Falco teased while ducking to avoid another splash. "Oh yeah," retorted with a grin. "At least I don't look like a rat that got drowned in milk." Falco, Eldris had built an impressive sandcastle, much to the admiration of the others. "Check this out," he said proudly, gesturing to his creation. A castle fit for a king. Eldris rarely ever showed this childish side of him, so it is quite heartwarming to see him playing around like this. Endrick dashed around with youthful energy, making small crabs float from the middle of the ocean. "Got one," he exclaimed while holding up a tiny crab for everyone to see before gently releasing it back into the water. Rylot at Endrick's antics and joined in the fun. Meanwhile, Gustav sat a little distance away, looking effortlessly handsome in his summer outfit. His presence commanded attention, and many of the ladies on the beach couldn't help but steal glances at him. However, Gustav paid them no mind. His focus was elsewhere, his eyes fixated on the holographic system notification panel that only he could see. The panel displayed 2 messages that had been occupying his thoughts for days. 5-year quest completed. 1/2 become the world's strongest mixed blood. Issuing rewards. Gustav furrowed his brow, trying to make sense of the messages. He had completed one of the quests, but the reward had yet to manifest. What was taking so long? As he pondered this, Angie approached him, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "Hey, Gus," she said, sitting beside him and nudging him playfully. "You're missing out on all the fun." Gustav smiled, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "I know, Angie, just got carried away for a bit." Angie tilted her head as her gaze flickered with concern. "You know we came here to relax, right?" Gustav sighed while running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, you're right. I should probably put everything away in the meantime." Angie placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Come on, a lot has happened. Why don't we enjoy the vacation? You've earned it. Gustav nodded, appreciating her words. Thanks, Angie. She smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. Now, come on, let's join the others. As they walked toward the shore, the rest of the group noticed them and cheered. Finally decided to join us. Huh? Falco called out, grinning. Gustav chuckled. Couldn't let you have all the fun. E splashed water at him playfully. Watch out, ladies and gentlemen. The world's strongest mixed blood is here. Gustav laughed, shaking the water from his hair. Yeah, let's just enjoy the day. They spent the next few hours swimming, playing beach volleyball, and lounging in the sun. Playing games like this had to be done with caution because if they weren't careful, they could make it inconvenient for everyone else around them. For instance, if Gustav hit a volleyball with as little as a tiny fraction of his strength, it could burrow straight through a person. Fortunately, they managed to have fun. Gustav found himself relaxing and temporarily forgetting about recent events. The sound of his friends' laughter, the warmth of the sun, and the coolness of the water all combined to create a perfect day. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the group gathered around a bonfire they had built on the beach. The flames crackled and danced, casting a warm glow over their faces. Empress Daria, always dignified, even in a swimsuit, raised a toast to friendship, to courage, and to the future, she said, her voice resonant with pride. To the future, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. As they sat around the fire, sharing stories and reminiscing, Gustav felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. The quest notifications still lingered in the back of his mind, but for now, he was content to be surrounded by those he cared about. Later, around midnight, the luxurious resort was quiet. The sounds of the ocean waves was a gentle background melody. The group had enjoyed their time on the beach, and now they retired to their rooms, each one designed to provide the utmost relaxation. Gustav's room was no exception. It was a spacious suite with high ceilings adorned with elegant furnishings. Draped in fine linens, the king-size bed sat against a wall adorned with tasteful artwork. Soft fluorescent lighting created a serene atmosphere, while a large window offered a breathtaking view of the moonlit ocean. A small seating area with plush chairs and a coffee table invited relaxation, and the bathroom, visible through an open door, boasted a deep soaking tub and a rainfall shower. Gustav sat in one of the chairs, his eyes fixated on the holographic system notification that hovered in front of him. 5-year quest completed. 1/2 become the world's strongest mixed blood. Issuing rewards. He had been staring at it for days, the mystery of the delayed reward gnawing at him. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Before getting up and crossing the room, as expected, he opened the door to find Angie standing there. "Hey," she greeted softly, stepping inside when he motioned for her to enter. "Hey, Angie," Gustav replied, closing the door behind her. "What's up?" "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, her eyes searching his. "I wanted to talk to you." Gustav nodded, leading her to the seating area. They sat down, the soft cushions sinking under their weight. "What's on your mind?" Angie took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what happened during the trial. How did you manage to dominate the darkness and regain consciousness? You're really Gustav, right?" Gustav's expression grew serious. "It's not something I managed to do easily," he began. "I've been fighting that darkness since the day I saved you. That was the reason I chose to be unconscious in the first place. It provided me a better chance." Angie listened intently, her eyes never leaving his. "But you managed to control it. How?" "I didn't really dominate it. I just isolated it using the 3-in-1 golden body. It allowed me to compartmentalize the darkness, keep it confined to one area." He lifted his shirt, revealing the left side of his abdomen where a dark, swirling pattern was etched into his skin. The sight of it was both mesmerizing and unsettling. "This is where I've isolated the darkness," he explained. "It could increase my strength to unprecedented heights, but it would also make me lose my mind. That's why I've decided to keep it isolated forever." Angie's eyes widened in surprise and curiosity. She reached out, her fingers lightly tracing the dark pattern. "It's incredible," she whispered as her touch sending a jolt of electricity through Gustav's body. "I mean, you're incredible," she added. Gustav shivered at her touch, feeling the electricity of her fingers on his bare skin. He gently grabbed her hand to stop it from continuously tracing the pattern as their eyes locked in an intense gaze. "Angie," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Their faces drew closer, the air between them charged with an electric, romantic tension. The world seemed to shrink until it was just the two of them. Their breaths mingled briefly as their lips met in a passionate kiss. The kiss soon deepened, and their hands began to explore each other. Gustav's fingers trailed down her back, feeling the smooth fabric of her dress, while Angie's hands moved to his chest, tugging at his shirt. They pulled back for a moment, their eyes filled with desire and need. "Gustav," Angie breathed, her voice husky with emotion. "Angie," he replied, his voice equally filled with longing. They moved with a sense of urgency, their clothes discarded piece by piece. Gustav's shirt fell to the floor, followed by Angie's dress. They stood there for a moment, taking in each other's forms, their hearts racing. The room seemed to glow with a soft, golden light as they came together again, their bodies pressing close. Gustav lifted Angie, carrying her to the bed where they continued to kiss, their passion intensifying with each passing second. As they lay down, the softness of the bed enveloping them, Gustav and Angie let their desires take over. Their movements were a dance of love and need, their touches gentle and urgent all at once. They whispered each other's names, their voices filled with emotion, as they became lost in the moment. Gustav left a trail of kisses down Angie's soft skin, causing her to shiver each time in excitement. She could feel something hard and thick poking her belly region. She instinctively reached out to grab it. Chapter 15:23 Passionate Love Making Session. Chapter 15:23 Passionate Love Making Session. Author's Note. Unedited chapter R18. Angie slowly stroked Gustav's thick rod, but barely managed to concentrate due to his lips wrapped around her left pinkish. Gustav savored every bit of her chest. Kisses, sucking, tongue swirls, and fondling. He would occasionally interchange, enjoying the subconscious shivers of Angie's body every time he touched her. At this point, her nether regions were completely moist, and all she could think about was satisfying the desire that had been subdued since their time on planet Ozius. Gustav himself hadn't felt this heated up before. It was like all that time away from Angie had built up a hidden penchant of strong desire. He was like a beast in heat right now. The room was charged with passion as Gustav continuously drove Angie crazy with foreplay. She couldn't seem to take it anymore, so she finally guided his thick rod towards her wet entry point. Gus. HNGH. Uncontrollable moans drifted out of their mouths as Gustav's tip slid through the entry point, causing a jolt of pleasure to surge through their bodies. It was like time had paused at this moment, as Gustav remained in place for a bit, while staring into Angie's eyes. Her face at this moment was immensely cute, and her mouth slightly ajar as her figure squirmed underneath him. Gustav leaned forward to kiss her lips as his rod slowly pushed deeper into her. Juice spilled from Angie's cave as Gustav's rod spread her tight insides, introducing her to a world of pleasure and emotions that made her brain nearly explode. She moaned in Gustav's mouth as he began to slide in and out of her slowly. Her cheeks turned flushed, and her thighs trembled with every thrust. She could feel him hitting spots within her that made her body tinge incomprehensibly. Gus. HNGHHH. She kept moaning loudly as Gustav's rod parted her pink sea. Gustav grabbed both of her thighs as pleasurable waves hit him and began to drill her harder. The sound of flesh squirming and the friction sliding through her wetness filled the room. Angie felt like she was going insane every time Gustav's rod fully slid into her. Did he get bigger? She would occasionally wonder internally as it left her without the ability to properly think. Pa, 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 pa. His balls would continuously slap her ass cheeks as he thrust away wantonly, making sure it reached the very depths of her cave. After many minutes in the missionary position, Gustav flipped Angie over. At first, she wondered what he was trying to do, but soon she understood when he grabbed her waist and pulled it upwards. Her arse was perked out before him, and her pink crack was quite visible from this angle. The juices flowed uncontrollably as she felt embarrassed to be in such a position upon imagining how Gustav must be staring at her. She wondered if she could even take him in this way. Why? Before she could stop him, Gustav thrust forward. Angie let out a loud moan as his cock forced its way through her pussy, spreading the wet walls and hitting a spot deep down, almost instantly. The thrust sent an immense jolt of pleasure to her brain, but before she could even say another word, Gustav had pulled back and thrust forward once more. Pa, 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 pa. Her butt cheeks jiggled back and forth like troubled sea waves as Gustav pounded her without holding back. He had gotten carried away and continuously caused her ass to make loud, slapping sounds with every heavy thrust. Ahaha, Gus. HNGHH. Angie's melodic tunes rang in his ears as his fingers sank into her waist while his hips constantly moved back and forth at an insane pace. The bed was creaking heavily and bursts of wind was spreading about the place. The room trembled as these two superpowered mixed bloods went at it nonstop. I am coming. Angie managed to utter as the pleasure built up to a crescendo. With a final passionate thrust, Gustav hit the very depths of her cave, causing Angie's legs to shudder like freshly cooked noodles. She fell to the bed while trembling like she got electrocuted. Liquids spilled out nonstop from her nether regions as she let out a low shriek. She breathed in and out heavily but could still feel Gustav's shadow looming over her. She turned around to see him smiling with his still erect, rod-dripping semen, and shyly covered her face. Don't look at me, she voiced with a jittery tone. Aren't you cute? Gustav smirked while slowly moving towards her. His lips stopped right before hers, but were not done. They began kissing again, and before Angie knew what was happening, he was inside her once more. There was no doubt that it was going to be a very long night. Angie also stopped holding back, and two of them proceeded to go at it very intensely, causing the entire resort to quake heavily. They did it from the bedroom to the bathroom to the table, which got destroyed, and even the walls. Cracks appeared all over the place, and even the bed couldn't bear the full brunt of their passionate rounds. The world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them in their intimate cocoon. The moonlight streamed through the cracked window, casting a soft glow over their entwined bodies. Afterward, they lay together on the floor, breathless and content. Their limbs were tangled in a loving embrace. Angie rested her head on Gustav's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. That was amazing, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Gustav smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. It was, he agreed. I've never felt anything like this before. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, simply enjoying each other's presence. The room, once filled with tension, was now a sanctuary of love and peace. The first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, casting a gentle glow over the room. The destruction in the room became more evident. As they basked in the afterglow, Gustav chuckled softly. "I think we might have overdone it," he said in amusement. Angie smiled, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Worth it," she replied, tracing a finger along his chest. "But we should probably fix this before anyone notices." Outside their room, the resort was abuzz with complaints. Visitors were talking to the management, bewildered by the tremors that had rocked the entire building. The staff was equally confused, trying to reassure the guests without understanding the true cause of the disturbance. Gustav sat up, surveying the damage with a thoughtful expression. "I can fix this," he said confidently. He stood, helping Angie to her feet, and then raised his hands. A soft, milky light began to emanate from his palms, filling the room with a gentle radiance. Using his atomic manipulation ability, Gustav focused on the room's structural integrity. The light flowed outward, touching the cracked walls, the broken windows, and the destroyed bed. Slowly but surely, the damage began to repair itself. Cracks sealed, glass reformed, and the bed reconstructed. In a matter of moments, the room was as good as new, every trace of their passionate night erased. Angie watched in awe, her admiration for Gustav growing even more. "You never cease to amaze me," she said, her voice filled with affection. Gustav smiled, pulling her into his arms. "And you never cease to inspire me," he replied, leaning in for a kiss. Their lips met, and the world seemed to fade away once more. Just as they were about to lose themselves in another round of lovemaking, a sudden and unexpected phenomenon occurred. The serene morning was abruptly shattered by low, ominous sounds that filled the air. Gustav immediately sensed a shift, his heightened awareness picking up on a massive presence surrounding Earth. He pulled back from Angie as his expression turned serious. "Something's wrong." Gustav's eyes squinted. Angie looked at him in concern. "What is it?" Gustav's eyes seemed to focus on a distant point beyond the walls of their room. "The entire Earth, it's been surrounded." Before Angie could respond, a massive shadow fell over the resort. They rushed to the window and looked up, their eyes widening in shock. The sky was filled with enormous spacecraft, each one bearing a bull-like, beast-headed sigil. The ships hovered ominously, casting dark silhouettes against the rising sun. People all over the resort, and indeed the entire planet, stared up in confusion and fear. Panic began to spread. The spacecraft hadn't phased through Earth's barrier, but they were large enough to bloat out the sun, which proved that they weren't dealing with ordinary forces. In the resort's lobby, guests and staff alike gathered, their faces pale with worry. One man pointed skyward, his voice trembling. "What are those? Are we under attack?" A woman clutched her child, her eyes wide with terror. "What's happening? Someone do something." Chapter 15, 24 Commander Urgrel's Loyalty. Chapter 15, 24 Commander Urgrel's Loyalty. Author's note. Unedited chapter The Morning Sky over Elysium Prime was filled with a strange glows and mounting shadows as numerous massive Tark spacecraft hovered in the outer atmosphere. Their presence had not yet breached Earth's barrier, but the sight alone was enough to throw the world into chaos. On the ground, MBO forces scrambled to organize a response, mobilizing troops and resources with unprecedented speed. In the luxurious resort where Gustav and his friends were staying, a sense of urgency permeated the air. Gustav, Angie, Falco, Eldris, Endrick, Rhea, and the rest of their group converged in the corridor. Their looks displayed confusion and concern. The corridor was already crowded with guests and staff, all whispering anxiously among themselves, with some trying to get out. "What's going on?" Falco asked, looking around at the sea of worried faces. "Why are there so many ships up there?" "I don't know," replied as his brow furrowed. "But whatever it is, it can't be good." Suddenly, a loud, booming announcement echoed across the entire planet. The voice was deep and commanding, reverberating through the air and capturing everyone's attention. It was coming from the Tark spacecraft. "We are the Tark's force. We have come to retrieve Gustav Crimson before any form of prosecution. Release him to us immediately, or we will declare war on Earth." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as the announcement continued. Gustav Crimson is to be handed over to the Tark's force at once. Failure to comply will result in immediate hostilities. Gustav's eyes widened as he recognized the voice. Commander Urgrel, the Tark's force commander he had met during his visit to Gohatark and the Tark-owned galaxy. Urgrel had been a key figure in Gustav's journey, providing him with a spacecraft and essential supplies, as well as revealing crucial information about his past and the existence of the other time candidate. A slow smile spread across Gustav's face as he understood what was happening. The Tarks had come to stop his trial, but they had arrived days after it had ended. They had assumed the worst, believing that the trial wouldn't go in Gustav's favor, and were now trying to save him. Angie noticed Gustav's smile and nudged him. "Gustav, do you know what's going on?" Gustav nodded, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Yes, Angie, the Tarks are here to rescue me. They thought I was still on trial and that things wouldn't end well." "Oh, it's that old dude," Endrick voiced upon recalling. Falco raised an eyebrow. "You know these guys?" Gustav chuckled. "Yes, I do. Commander Urgrel is an old acquaintance. He helped Endrick and I a lot when we visited Gohatark." He shook his head in disbelief. "Only you, Gustav. Only you would have alien friends showing up to rescue you." The announcement continued to play across the planet. The Tark's ultimatum sending shockwaves through the global population. People were scared and confused, unsure of what to make of this sudden threat. Gustav turned to everyone. "I need to go up there and talk to them. They don't know that the trial is over, and that I was cleared of all charges." Angie grabbed his arm, her eyes filled with concern. "Be careful, Gustav. We don't know what will happen." Gustav squeezed her hand reassuringly. "They'll be fine. I just need to explain the situation to Urgrel. He'll understand." Immediately after saying that, he vanished from the resort and reappeared high in Earth's upper atmosphere. The blue planet below and the dark void of space above framed the scene. Before him, numerous large spacecraft hovered ominously, each emblazoned with the Tark bull-headed sigil. These colossal ships lined up in a formation that spoke of military precision and readiness for battle. Such a sight would have been terrifying to the average person, especially if they were aware that the Tarks weren't under the Alliance and ran things in their galaxy under a solo authority. It turned out that Gustav's presence wasn't the only one in the upper atmosphere. Many MBO aircraft had risen to meet the perceived threat. The tension had risen to great heights, and it was clear that both sides were mere moments away from clashing. Gustav raised his hand, a signal to the MBO forces to hold their positions. "Commander Urgrel, this is Gustav Crimson. I am safe, and I request an audience with you immediately. There is no need for hostility." His voice, amplified by his immense power, boomed across the atmosphere and echoed down to Earth below, effortlessly reaching every corner of the planet. The MBO forces recognized Gustav's command and hesitated but held their positions. However, within the Tark spacecraft, suspicions ran high. The Tarks, known for their caution and strategic thinking, were not easily swayed. They found it difficult to believe that Earth would simply hand over Gustav without a fight. Whispers of him being an imposter spread quickly among the Tark soldiers. In the command center of the lead Tark ship, soldiers turned to Commander Urgrel for guidance. "Commander, what are your orders? Could this be a trick?" Urgrel's stern face was etched with lines of concern as he pondered the situation. He knew Gustav well, but the stakes were too high to take any chances. "Prepare to engage," he ordered, his voice firm. "If this is an impostor, we will expose him. If not, we will deal with the consequences." The Tark's ships powered up their weapons, and within moments, a fierce battle erupted. Beams of energy and projectiles crisscrossed the space between the MBO and Tark forces, turning the serene upper atmosphere into a chaotic war zone. The numerous MBO aircraft, agile and equipped with the latest technology, maneuvered expertly, returning fire with equal ferocity. Gustav, positioned at the heart of the conflict, tried desperately to intervene. A beam fired towards him, but with a wave of his hand, he easily deflected it. He proceeded to move with blinding speed as he intercepted attacks from both sides, trying to prevent damage and casualties. His voice rang out amidst the chaos, "Stop this at once!" But his words fell on deaf ears. The Tarks, convinced they were facing a clever ruse, continued their assault, demanding, "Where is the real Gustav? We will not be deceived." Tark soldiers flew out of their spacecraft with all sort of powerful weapons in grasp and supernatural abilities activated. The same happened with MBO officers as the battle moved on to the next level. The battle intensified with supernatural abilities and high technology clashing. Boom, boom. Explosions lit up the sky, and the shock waves could be felt miles away. Realizing that mere words would not suffice, Gustav decided to unleash a fraction of his true power. His eyes emitted a pinkish-red glow as a crimson cross appeared in his pupils. Unleashing his cosmic superiority Yarki, an unfathomable energy radiated outward in a limited scale. The effect was immediate and overwhelming, sweeping across the entire surroundings. Everyone immediately froze in their tracks. "Cease this madness now, or I will destroy everyone," Gustav's voice boomed, carrying the weight of absolute power. The declaration hung in the air, a promise of annihilation that none could ignore. The fighting stopped instantly. MBO pilots and Tark soldiers alike found themselves immobilized, their weapons and abilities rendered useless by the oppressive force of Gustav's Yarki. Gustav hadn't even decided to stop their body motor functions. He simply threatened them and decided he would take further actions if they chose to disobey. But fortunately, it got to them. Commander Urgrel, sensing the undeniable truth in Gustav's power, ordered his soldiers to stand down. "It is him," Urgrel said in awe. "This is the real outworldly, our savior." The tension began to dissipate as the Tarks retracted their weapons and the MBO forces lowered their defenses. Gustav allowed his Yarki to fade, though its presence lingered. He floated towards the lead Tark ship with unbridled confidence. As he approached, a hatch opened and a transport beam enveloped him, bringing him aboard. The interior of the ship was as impressive as its exterior, with advanced technology and tactical displays lining the walls. Gustav was escorted to the command center, where Commander Urgrel awaited. "Our savior," Urgrel greeted him with a respectful bow. "I apologize for the confrontation. We acted out of concern for your safety." Gustav shook his head with a light smile. "No need to apologize, Commander. I appreciate your efforts to protect me even though you arrived quite late. The trial was concluded days ago, and I was found innocent." Urgrel's eyes widened in surprise. "Is that so?" "We feared the worst and came to intervene." Gustav nodded. "Yes, and I am grateful for your concern, but there's no need for further hostilities. Earth's people are already on edge." Urgrel sighed, visibly relieved. "Understood. We will withdraw our forces immediately and issue a formal apology to Earth." Turning to his communication officer, Urgrel gave the order. Moments later, the Tark's new message was broadcast across the planet. "You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories